Welcome back. I'm Eric Kane. I wanted to talk briefly today about the 7th episode of The Last of Us on HBO. I know we're about a week late, but better late than never. This episode, I have mixed feelings about. On the one hand, I think it was nice. It was a nice episode until it was a sad episode. But I like that The Last of Us gives us these episodes with moments of sweetness and niceness and love and sort of allows us to see the good in the world, even in the apocalypse. And so the whole mall scene, and I know a lot of people are like, well, that's not realistic. That wouldn't be, the power wouldn't work. Even if it did, the machines wouldn't work. That place would be stripped bare. Fine. Realistically, you're probably right. But I'm just going to suspend my disbelief and enjoy it. I think it's, the carousel scene, and then these other like wonders that Riley shows Ellie. I think these are nice moments. I think that I am doubly aware of stuff like this because the second game, the best parts of that game, I think, are flashback scenes between Joel and Ellie. There's, not with spoiling too much, but there's one really great scene in the game where they visit a museum. And it's like a natural history museum with dinosaurs and stuff. And it's just wonderful, wonderful part of that game. One of my favorite moments. And I think because there's so much darkness in these stories, I've always kind of been fond of these little interludes where you get to have, something human and good. That's one reason I loved the Bill and Frank episode so much. I thought it was so nice to see love flourishing even in the apocalypse and between two people who were unlikely to ever meet without the apocalypse. This episode, however, did not work as well as that episode, and there's a lot of reasons for that. For one thing, we've now spent 2 episodes on flashbacks and 1 episode that was the prologue. So out of a 9-episode season, we have a prologue and 2 flashback episodes, leaving only 6 episodes for the present. And a problem with that is that a couple of those, we spent way too much time with Kathleen and her people. So I just feel like it's thrown off the balance a little bit. And we haven't gotten enough of what we need to get between Joel and Ellie and that story. And I think this would have worked better as a series of flashbacks within an episode that was focused on Ellie figuring out how to take care of Joel. Here's the thing. The DLC was released after the game. And yes, it takes place the same moment in the story, but we'd already played through the whole game at that point. The DLC then brings us back to this moment and then gives us this flashback. So it fits in the same place in the story, but at that point you'd finished the game, so you didn't have that interrupt the momentum of the game. I think if you'd plopped the DLC or that section of story right there in the game, it would have felt weird. Like, wait a minute, why are we stopping everything right now? And that's how it feels in the show. Like, wait a minute, we just had this lull in the action when they reached Jackson. And now things are getting intense again, and now we're going to stop and hit the brakes and go back in time. Like I think it's important to know how Ellie got bit. I think that stuff is important, but I don't think it needed an entire episode. I think it would have worked a lot better if we'd had Ellie, maybe fighting off some bad guys, maybe fighting off some infected, trying to find supplies, like to disinfect Joel's wound before she stitched it up. And then sprinkled throughout that, we get the Ellie and Riley stuff, and you just wouldn't have as much of it. I'm sorry, and that's okay. I don't think you needed the entire DLC story in that episode. I think you could have cut it down. You could have had just a few important chunks of that story. It would have been just as impactful without totally upending the momentum of the story of Joel and Ellie trying to find the fireflies. In my previous video on The Last of Us, which I will link to down below, I talk about some of my misgivings about this show in general. Most of which are like, it's going too fast. Like, we're getting through the first game, the story too fast, but also like it's not scary enough. There's not enough tension. And this episode also breaks that sense of tension. Like, sure, there is some, in that scene, it's telegraphed that there's going to be this clicker coming to attack them. And that adds a sense of dread and fright to that episode. But again, it's a flashback. It's a flashback, so we get, we know that Ellie survives. We know we get a pretty good sense of what's going to happen, right? So in that respect, I just think it was a mistake in terms of pacing and plotting. As for like Ellie and Riley, a couple things just didn't work as well for me as in the game. They seem they seem like they're very different ages. I know that Bella Ramsey is 19, but she's playing a 14-year-old. She seems 14, sort of. I mean, she seems younger than Riley, and it just felt like the like they like each other didn't work as well because of that. I would understand if maybe they just had showed. And I know they're just following the game here, so that's fine. I get that. But given the actors, given the casting, given this adaptation, I would have had maybe Ellie clearly have a crush on her older BFF, but have that not be reciprocated in kind. I would have had this just be a friendship episode that shows what good friends they are and shows how Ellie, maybe in her admiration, is also pining for her older friend a bit. That, I think, would have worked better and been more realistic. Maybe you wouldn't get that kiss moment, or maybe they could have made the kiss moment be less like this, oh yes, I'll love you forever, and more of like wait a minute, and then that awkwardness interrupted by the attack. Partly, I also since they have already done a romance flashback with Bill and Frank, I don't know that we needed another romance flashback, and because I think that friendship itself carries a lot of weight, like the friendship of these two girls and their rift that they've that's grown between them because of the Fireflies and Fedra. I did like how they showed the Fedra officer as being a really humane and decent guy, just trying to do the best job he could to keep people safe. That was a good touch. I like the music choices in this episode. I love that we got some Eddie Vedder at the beginning, with Ellie jogging around the gym. And overall, I would say that I liked the episode. I really did, but I think I would have liked it more if I didn't feel as though maybe this story was being sort of rushed to its conclusion. We need more time in this adaptation of the first game to get where we're going. And I know where we're going. And so it worries me that we're going to get there too soon without the sort of emotional investment we need for it to pay off. And that's another problem with this show, I think, is that we are hitting the same story beats, but a lot of the time we're not earning them the way that the game does. Partly that's because we cut a lot of the sort of struggle that leads to these moments. And in the game, of course, that's hiding and sneaking and attacking, fighting, bad guys and infected. And a lot of that has been taken out of the show. I know you couldn't do a 1-for-1 ratio there, but I think we do need more of that danger and action and violence to get to the emotional beats that we're hitting. We also just need more time with some of these characters. Like we needed more time with Tess to really feel the weight of her death. We needed more time with, I still think Bill should have survived and stuck around with Joel and Ellie for a while before he also died. And I think that we didn't get enough Sam and Henry, partly because we spent so much time on a throwaway character like Kathleen. So this episode just kind of continues that trend of not getting where we need to go in the time we have allotted. And with just 2 episodes left, that definitely worries me a little bit. So yeah, I still like it, but as I said in my last video, I'm not loving it as much as I did at first. I think the first 3 episodes I was pretty invested in. And then these next 4 have had I haven't been as excited to watch the show. I haven't been as excited to see where they're going to take it. This episode, for all the things it did right, definitely left me feeling a little high and dry. So we'll see. We got 2 more, episode 8, episode 9, and we're done. I wish that they had extended this story into 2 seasons. We could have had a lot more time with a lot of important characters. Maybe even some flashbacks to Joel and Tommy making their way to the QZ. And maybe even introducing some characters that will show up later in part 2, which are seasons 3 and 4. Seasons 2 and 3. Introducing some of those characters earlier on so that we could have started bonding with them before we get to that section of the story. But that I don't want to spoil, so I will leave that just hanging there. Thank you for watching. Sorry this is so late. I don't know why. I don't know why it took me so long to make this video. I have no excuses other than inspiration strikes when it strikes, I guess. But like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Peace.